Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by and welcome to today's collaboration Working Today, Planning for Tomorrow conference call. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. For your information, this conference is being recorded. Now, I would like to hand the conference over to your speaker today, David Cornwell. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Andrea. And hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. This is the first in a series of webinars from O2 Business, and today we'll be talking about collaboration. My name is David Cornwell. I'm the Head of Solutions here at O2 Business. So, COVID-19. I'm sure you're well aware of the continuing impact of the pandemic to our professional and personal lives. The overnight shift to remote working for some sectors and businesses has forced rapid changes in working practices. As we begin to hopefully emerge from formal restrictions, we'll find that in some cases, these changes actually deliver benefits in their own right. Today, we have Souma Unni, Martin Gill, and Chris Hall, who are our digital collaboration and UC experts, joining us to discuss the impact of collaboration environments in the short and to long term and give some insight into potential ways to address future strategic challenges around the thread of employee experience, customer experience, and security and compliance. So welcome, Martin, Souma, Chris. Can you give us a quick introduction, please? And we'll start with Souma.
Hi, everyone. I'm Souma Unni. I head up the Unified Comms and Contact Center Pre-Sales team in O2 Business.
Thank you, Souma. Martin?
Yeah, thanks, Dave, and good afternoon to all. So my name's Martin Gill. I work in our digital workplace team here at O2, and I help customers choose the best collaboration software for them to enable their digital workplace.
Great, thank you, Martin. And finally, Chris.
Yeah, hi all. Yeah, my name's Chris Hall, and I'm a pre-sales solution architect, and I specialise in Microsoft Stack, so Microsoft Teams, Skype for Business, and Office 365.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. So as we move on to our first slide, which we're naming the 2020 wave, as we look through the different phases we've been through in the last few months, or actually for most of this year, what we can see is that COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdown has presented huge challenges to every business and public sector organisation in the country. We've changed the way we live, the way we work, the way we shop, and even the way our children learn as a result. Digital technology has enabled us to cope pretty well. If we were having this conversation when I started my career an unbelievable 20 years ago this year, we would not be able to work in the same way and probably wouldn't see the faces of our colleagues or extended families for a number of months because the tools just wouldn't be available. Another 50 years before that, many wouldn't have been able to even speak regularly to their family or colleagues, and the ability to work from home or remotely would have been extremely rare. Instead, over the last 3 months, we've seen many switch to working remotely overnight, with many others following in the weeks imminently following lockdown, or immediately following lockdown. This phase of enforced mobilisation presented some challenges in capacity, user training and experience, security and physical location, which most people then addressed with more permanent solutions as we moved into the second and third months of lockdown as we went through late March into April and then May. Of course, we will adapt quickly, and many of us have already turned towards the future and how we build for the new normal, whatever that might be. But I think we're starting to see some definition about what it might look, at least in the medium term. So questions like, how will we continue to support a remote workforce? How will we continue to improve how we serve our customers? And what choices will we make to build for the new normal while caring for our people and the environment? But all with the belief that digital technology will be the heart of whatever comes next. At least that's our belief, and hopefully it's yours too. That's why you joined us today. At O2, we are pretty proud of our role in keeping the country running. And we've been able to support our people, our customers, and even society as a whole in ways we've never seen before. Things like collaboration and conferencing services continue to be in high demand, which is why we're here to talk to you today. So, as we move on to the next slide, I'll come to the panel. Looking at 2020 wave on the previous slide and how businesses react to the initial COVID-19 lockdown and the challenges they face with it, what have you observed and how have organisations tackled the problems?
Yeah, I guess
Martin first, please.
I'll kick off there. Yeah, thank you. Cheers, Dave. So what we've seen is enterprises, whether they're ready or not, they've been thrust into accommodating changes that allow for remote working, and the traditional rate at which technology is adopted by organisations, which is often driven by a desire to improve efficiency and competitive advantage, has been trumped by the need for resilience, for agility and outcomes. So part of that shift has been organisations, large and small, equipping staff with the necessary tools so that they can carry on doing what they need to do. I think organisations are still trying to figure out the role of what technology can play in them achieving the greater customer reach, the collaboration and engagement, and beyond that, broadly speaking, how technology can ensure employees can be productive and have a greater focus on alignment and cohesion.
Thank you, Martin. I think it's certainly true that necessity is the mother of invention, as they say, and we've certainly seen for ourselves and our customers many of the perceived barriers to things like remote working have been removed overnight. Chris, coming to you then, what are your observations over this period?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So, yeah, I've seen the need to increase the public internet pipes, the bandwidth on those public internet pipes for some of our hosted Skype customers. So typically, it was designed originally for 25% of users working from home in sort of normal times, and clearly, in the current environment, up to 95 to 100% of those users have been working from home. So we've had to uplift those internet pipes into the hosted Skype environment. We've also seen demand for new call recording software functionality to be set up in conjunction with teams from a couple of local authorities. And if they'd had that already in place, it might not have been such a panic to get up and running and install, but we achieved it. I also think as collaboration platforms and tools have come to sit at the centre of the new normal way of working, it's likely that that some form of work from home will be the enforced way of working for a long time to come. And it's potentially, a business may have rushed to install a collaboration tool and rush that deployment, or you may already have a well-established tool already in place. I mean, either way, I think it's now could be an opportune time to reevaluate that. Ask yourself, is it the right collaboration tool? Is it adequate for now and into the longer term? And can the correct security and compliance controls be put in place?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. Even within the main phases we've defined here, there have been some micro phases as well. The initial panic to just to get hold of laptops and things like that, then to buy licenses, and then to look at your infrastructure. We'll talk in a moment about looking forward to the medium and longer term and what that means in terms of planning, both in terms of how we change the user's environment for good, but also potentially how we plan for the future. What if this happens again? So what about the more traditional functions of an organisation? Soumya, what do we see there?
That's an interesting question, Dave, because if you look at the customer experience aspect of this, what we've seen over the last several weeks is that businesses have been trying to support their contact centre operations remotely, continue providing the same levels of customer experience. However, as we know, unlike the knowledge workers in an organisation, contact centre operations have historically sort of gravitated towards an office-based model. And there are a number of reasons for this. Again, speaking from personal experience, I've managed contact centre platforms in my previous roles, and the challenges stated have been primarily around security, compliance management, the ability to provide the right level of IT infrastructure to the agent workforce, again, ensuring quality of service on voice interactions, challenges with managing performance of a remote workforce, as well as being able to provide the right level of training and keeping the teams motivated. And these are all fair challenges. And for all those reasons, I think perhaps businesses were less prepared to shift their contact centre workforce to a remote working model, and may have not been able to restore business continuity quickly enough, I think, in response to COVID. And if you think about it, it's a sizable portion of the UK working population as well. We know there are over 6,000 contact centres in the UK employing nearly 250,000 people.
Wow, that's a massive number, isn't it? 250,000 people just working in contact centres, and it always seems to be the last bit to transform to sort of modern ways of working in my mind. So if you were running a contact centre, you were running a company which is largely based around a large contact centre, where would you, as an expert in this field, start? What would be the first thing you'd do?
I can certainly share some insights based on our experience in supporting a number of customers, particularly over the last couple of months. Again, the main challenge has been providing the infrastructure, being able to provide devices, headsets, VPN access all over a very short span of time. And some businesses have opted for laptop or tablet rentals as a short-term measure. They've enabled softphone clients. Sometimes this has required new licenses to be procured and enabled on the hosted platform. Again, a bit of retraining for the agents to make sure they're logging on to their contact center apps using the softphone or a PSTN number as the audio endpoint for voice calls, as opposed to their standard desk phones. And this is particularly true for the healthcare sector with some of our customers, where the standard practice has been even for the non-clinical staff to use physical handsets. I would say that using PSTN for agent call delivery may be a good option where internet connectivity is not entirely reliable. Again, you can ensure quality of service by doing that. However, it's worth bearing in mind that this will have implications on the SIP channel capacity, as well as it will incur additional costs on outbound calls. Again, some of our customers have naturally seen a huge spike in their inbound call volumes. They've had to increase their SIP channel capacity almost overnight, and this is perhaps easily managed with a hosted contact center service. And I do appreciate that this may be a bit more of a challenge for customers with on-prem or more legacy capabilities. And in such cases, we've seen customers take advantage of inbound call management capabilities, and this would mean setting up call diversion on contact center numbers to mobile destinations, and perhaps using the more advanced capabilities such as Hunt Group, for instance, or simple IVRs that can manage the call routing and minimize any delays in answering inbound calls, as well as minimizing the possibility of call abandonment. I guess I just wanted to add that perhaps this is the right time to start thinking about moving to a cloud service. I know it may be a big leap for some businesses, but they can certainly start evaluating the options for a phased migration and look at leveraging some of the trading programs that are available from vendors to protect the current investments, particularly on licensing, and enabling them to transition to a cloud-first model in the most cost-effective manner. So I guess in summary, it's about leveraging the capabilities in place today and then start planning for the longer term as well.
Thank you, Soumya. You make some really interesting points there. I mean, contact centres are very often the last to transform, particularly when it comes to modern ways of working, as I mentioned previously. But there's potential massive gains for contact centres in adopting a cloud technology and a remote workforce. It just things like seasonal variability are much easier with a cloud model, aren't they?
Indeed, yeah.
Cool, thank you, Soumya. So, Chris, coming to you then, with so much change happening so quickly, what advice would you offer to our audience?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Yeah, so I think there has to be a refocus on security. So, security is a buzzword, isn't it? So in the rush to deploy at very short notice, I think some shortcuts may have been taken. So if you might have rushed to deploy a new collaboration tool, and that project, typically in normal times might have taken 6 to 12 months to deploy, with all the project governance, project planning, et cetera. That potentially could have been reduced to a few days to weeks even to get staff up and running quickly. And it's likely that security might have been an afterthought, or might have been dare I say, forgotten. So I would say now is the time to reassess your security posture. So collaboration tools by their very nature should make it easy to share and work on files and documents, but you should consider things like guest access and open federation and external user access for third-party support or contractors. How do they access the collaboration tool? Can that external access be controlled? Do you know who has access to your data? As specific with Microsoft Teams, do you allow all your users to create teams, or should that be restricted? Because you could if all your users in an organisation are allowed to create teams, you've got team sprawl basically with no naming convention and no control over what's actually happening. So yeah, time to reassess your security posture, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Chris. It's security for me is always an interesting balance between usability and user experience and protecting company assets, and the balance has shifted significantly towards that user experience in the last few months, but we have to shift it back, or it has to have been shifted back already. So have you got any advice or immediate advice for customers who are worried in the near term about security?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cool. So, yes, there is so much you can do. There's so many things you can look at. So there's technology out there like data loss prevention, conditional access, and all these types of things can help with securing a company's file data. You can consider setting up something called file classification. So this can help against sensitive data leaking from your organization. Conditional access is especially effective, I think. So this is where you can set up different levels of access dependent on whether the device the user logs on from is a company managed device or if it's an uncontrolled, personal consumer type device. So the example there would be the company managed device can download and edit documents, but the unmanaged device can only read documents in a web browser, say, so that, Word Online, for example. But that unmanaged, device can't download the document, it can't edit or copy or paste content out of the document. Another Microsoft technology that could be considered, I think, is communication compliance policies. So these can sit across Office 365 applications, including Teams and Exchange Online, etc. And this can be used to ensure acceptable use, ethical standards, and other corporate policies are either enforced or alerted against. So an example of this, so HR could, for example, scan communications for harassment or inappropriate language and either deal with it there and then or be alerted on it. Another example could be legal, maybe. They could scan for unauthorized communications about confidential projects like mergers and acquisitions, for example. So, yeah, there's quite a lot you can do with certainly existing tools, hopefully, that people have got, particularly with Office 365, who've already got that in place.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. It's an interesting topic. I know you and I have discussed previously about, and often the barrier is physical hardware to be able to send people home. If they haven't got laptops, particularly when a crisis hits, getting hold of hardware to send people home. So that option about enabling people to work from their own devices, but in a secure way, is actually really important, both in a situation like this, but also, as I mentioned previously, around industries with seasonal demand like retail, where their contact centres are very, very busy for 3 or 4 months towards the end and the beginning of the year. Why have stacks of laptops sitting there actually enable people to use their own devices, but do so in a secure way? So coming to Martin next then, from what we've heard today, it's pretty clear that things are going to change. And we always sort of assume that people are going to remain the same, but of course that might not be the case. People might need to invest in their people differently. So do you think, Martin, that roles change now, that organisations are looking to become more agile?
Yeah, and I think they have to. I mean, I speak to a lot of businesses, and a lot of the stories they share back is how, as themselves, they're reevaluating the value of first-line workers. So historically, first-line workers were overlooked when organisations were investing in technology and collaboration tools, and a shift to empowering that first-line worker with the tools and platforms they need will prove to have a real direct impact on customer satisfaction. It will drive loyalty from within a customer base. Digitally empowered first-line workers will become a necessity for organisations, in my opinion, and consideration will be given to prepare a first-line workers' participation in that digital transformation strategy, which will include training, it'll include technology and information sharing, because if you just think about it, that the first-line worker is going to be first with the customer, first with product, and first with brand. So it'll become a really key focus in organisations' exit plans from lockdown because of the significant impact that the role has on employee and customer experience.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. I think, that's a really good point around first-line workers. I'd like to actually add to that myself that a lot of the value first-line workers can bring is bringing a personal touch and bringing a bit of humanity to an interaction. So, and that's often easier. If they're not in I'll go back to the contact centre example, if they're not sat in sort of battery hen-style contact centres and they're actually at home, they can bring a bit more personality to that interaction, which I think can only be a good thing. So I'm going to move on then to summarise that point before we move on. I think we said that collaboration tools are essential, and they're even expected by our user base. We all know the stats around millennials forming 50% of the workforce by 2024, etc. But they're no longer simply a nice to have. Aside from the user demand, there's obviously the need to be agile and flexible, because we don't know what's coming next. To do that, it's worth re-evaluating the tools available to you. Do these have features that would be useful to you? Can you deploy them quickly? And if you are forced into a situation again, could you turn on features that you would otherwise think take a little bit longer to think about? But we're now beyond that initial crisis, so you have to consider security policy and posture. Education of users is critical. There are also are there also security and compliance features within those tools which you could take advantage of, as Chris mentioned a moment ago? And contact centres and first-line workers do need specific focus. But there's no reason why they can't change to the better and change to the better permanently. So we're going to move on to our next question. Would you agree that organisations are now focusing on how they develop their near-term remote work strategy into long-term business transformation?
Yeah, and it was mentioned earlier on in some of the panel feedback that what's for certain is what we've seen in the past month will have more of an effect on the consumerisation of IT than the past 10 years. And we all believe that the future is going to be a really exciting time for enterprise software, and a future that reimagines how we work and how we communicate and how we collaborate. And not just software, but technology too. So specifically how artificial intelligence and virtual reality can enhance the experience of employee and customer. There was a recent Gartner survey that revealed that 74% of CFOs expect to move a number of previously on-site employees to remote working situations permanently post-COVID-19. And that same study also revealed that a quarter of those expected at least 20% of their on-site employees will move to remote work permanently. And I guess with that shift, communication and collaboration platforms such as Teams and WebEx have seen incredible usage increase. So WebEx hosted more than 20 billion meeting minutes in April, compared with 14 billion in March and 7 billion in February. And Satya Nadella revealed that Teams usage has increased to more than 75 million daily users and 200 million meeting minutes in a single day. So there's definitely plenty to figure out around the future of work. It's a safe bet that things won't exactly be as they were before, but I think what's likely is companies will go more virtual, more agile, have flexible working hours. They will look to attract talent from anywhere, and we can expect to see more of a demand on virtualized environments. Some changes will take longer than others. There'll be factors affecting that, like emerging technology, attitudes towards those. But one trend that I'm excited and I expect to be adopted really quickly is that of on-demand training and on-demand education. With the aggressive development of video conferencing, they'll increase adoption of AI, and we'll see loads of organisations utilise online teaching as a new arm of L&D, and organisations will demand a collaboration platform that can support that way of working.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. I think you're absolutely right. For me, the online education piece was already starting to emerge anyway, but it's just accelerated that process, hasn't it? I mean, we've seen in recent weeks our own Telefonica corporate university start to offer some of their courses which would have traditionally been offered in person online, and the feedback has been really, really good, and obviously it enables that to many, many more people to access that. I think the adoption of AI is also an interesting point, and I read an article, I think I may have shared this on LinkedIn, about a contact centre who had never really thought about the adoption of AI for things like chatbots, but they had to as a result of COVID. And actually what they found is, first of all, they're pretty cheap and easy to deploy and develop, but secondly, they were offering, in many cases, a better level of service, and the customer feedback was actually better. And the AI, of course, only learns and gets better over time. So they're not looking to roll that back. So that could be a permanent change. Soumya, coming to you next then, would you agree with what we just discussed there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as Martin said, it's clear that businesses will need to adopt a hybrid model of working in the long term and continue supporting that flexible working model. Again, from a customer experience point of view, definitely my recommendation would be that this is the right time for businesses to start reviewing their contact center cloud migration strategies, consider moving to a contact center as a service solution. That would give them greater flexibility, more agility in managing their customer engagement teams. I just want to add that a number of CCaaS providers also offer seasonality, so the ability for the businesses to flex up and down with a consumption-based commercial model, which makes it quite attractive, and then this will also help reduce the total cost of ownership. And they allow flexible deployment models as well, so if it needs to be done in a shorter span of time, you can always consider deploying it as an over-the-top service, or if you choose to as a more secure service over a private connection as well. Again, the deployment cycles for a contact center service again is much shorter compared to implementing the traditional on-prem contact center platform. So just tying this back to some of the points I made earlier on the perceived challenges in running contact center operations remotely, I think this is where, Martin alluded to some of these points as well. This is where some of the evolving technologies can help. As an example, using voice biometrics for ID&V would be quite useful. Again, using quality management for managing compliance with advanced analytics to score voice as well as non-voice interactions. Using real-time voice analytics to manage and escalate interactions proactively. And for most CCaaS solutions, the agent clients are browser-based with WebRTC support, and they can very quickly sort of be deployed in an over-the-top fashion, minimizing the need for rolling out applications and softphone clients and then managing VPN access and so on and so forth. So I guess the final point, again, is making sure the agents are equipped with all the right tools they need and providing a good agent experience, which means perhaps tighter integration between the contact center and the enterprise collaboration platform, so agents are able to engage and consult with the specialists and back office teams. Things like knowledge management systems or real-time agent assistance capabilities, and even gamification perhaps for rewarding and keeping the teams motivated. And as you mentioned earlier, Dave, it's also about AI, meaningful AI, in the form of virtual agents or conversational chatbots that can sort of filter out the more standard, repetitive tasks and only assign the more complex queries to the agents. So I guess in summary, what I'm trying to say is that, it's about providing a great agent experience that can in turn help drive and enhance customer experience.
Yeah, thank you, Soumya. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen the example of the AI chatbot, which I can't remember who provides it actually, but it answers the initial set of queries, but as soon as the customer's asking something they can't answer, it passes it to a human in the loop. But the AI is watching, and it learns from that interaction with the human as well. So in the next interaction, it knows more and gets better. So yeah, it's exciting times. Things have certainly come a long way since my days of writing IVR scripts about 15 years ago. But of course, we've mentioned it a couple of times already, but security always has to be a consideration. And Chris, of course, we'll come back to you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just going to mention it, Soumya mentioned managing the VPN there. So, alongside VPNs, businesses, I think, should be looking to use multi-factor authentication if they haven't already. I personally believe it's a great way to make sure who is logging in is verified by more than just their passwords. It's a second factor, so either a text message with a PIN code or a Microsoft Authenticator app, that type of thing. So if your organisation hasn't enabled MFA yet, it's probably, I would say, it's something you should be looking to do in the coming weeks and months. It just adds, an extra layer of protection for access to your systems and your collaboration tools, and it ensures the employee accessing that app is who they purport to be. I mean, MFA also protects against brute force password attacks, because obviously, even if the password is broken, the second factor, without that, the person doing the brute force attack can't get in. So yeah, MFA is a great tool. In the longer term, I'd say, consider discovery of shadow IT in your network, in your environment. So it's a bit of a Microsoft stat when when IT admins are asked how many cloud apps they think their employees use, on average they'd say 30 to 40, but in reality there are potentially hundreds of separate apps that could be being used by employees in your organisation, and there's a bit of technology from Microsoft called Cloud App Security. And this helps you discover and identify which apps are being used and what your risk level is. It shouldn't come as a surprise that employees might use unsanctioned apps, especially if they're using their own personal devices, personal laptops, or they might have signed up to a SaaS application and be using that on a company managed device. And these unsanctioned apps potentially have never been reviewed by security team and might not be compliant with any of your policies. So. The other point there really is because your employees will be accessing these applications and resources away from the office. You can't rely on the rules and the policies on your firewalls anymore. That on its own is not enough. So another further enhancement you can add is to the cloud app security. You can combine it with some other products. So you can combine it with Zscaler directly, and you can integrate the two products together. And this can enhance your security cloud discovery, and you can then find out really what's happening and what's going on in your environment and in your network.
Cool, thank you, Chris. Yeah, it's an interesting point. I know that our security team occasionally run these sort of consultancy processes where they look at a customer's sort of shadow IT stack, and the IT team are never not surprised by how many shadow IT and unsanctioned applications their users are running. The big question that always comes back though is there a single vendor or turnkey solution that can solve all these problems for them?
Well, yeah, not in every case. That doesn't need to be a barrier. I mean, clearly you're going to. Most organisations have applications from different vendors. I mean, a lot of companies are Microsoft House, but they'll still have, applications from Oracle, SAP, for example. So I think the ambition of an organisation should be to introduce a method to secure all these disparate SaaS and on-premise applications, and even in-house developed applications. And I think you can do this by using one identity provider, such as it's surprisingly enough Azure AD. It can simplify the way you manage your applications. It basically provides a single identity system for your cloud SaaS applications and your on-premise applications. And what it also means is you can deploy single sign-on potentially, so that password management from a user perspective is easier to achieve. But it also gives the organisation an advantage because when an employee leaves an organisation, you just can disable their Azure AD account, but that also then blocks access to all these other integrated applications because you're only using one identity provider. So therefore, that user then can't, they've already left, so they can't log on to the disparate SaaS application because their AD account has already been disabled. So yeah, Azure AD, very good.
Yeah, I gather you're a fan. Yeah, good to hear. I mean, the one thing I'd like to add to that actually is the real estate question. I think it's fair to say that a company's real estate might need to change. They might feel they need to consolidate. Our own research is saying that 33% of users are now expecting to work from home for at least 3 days a week. So maybe you don't need as many desks, maybe you don't need as many buildings, but more importantly, certainly the technology needs to integrate into those buildings as well. And we're moving towards a world where we have a hybrid workforce of mix of in and out of office staff. And how do you make sure that everyone gets a similar experience? Part of the answer is, of course, technology, but part of the answer is certainly integrating that technology into your buildings, into your meeting rooms, and actually making it a space where people can collaborate rather than sit and work. So thank you, everyone, for your insights there. Just to summarise the points there, so collaboration is the future for any business. I think we're fairly comfortable that is the direction of travel. That's especially the case as we're going to see a great shift towards remote flexible working, and as I mentioned a moment ago, that creation of the hybrid workforce, which we at O2 have been for quite a number of years, and we've had to make changes to help that flourish and help people to work in the same way. Security doesn't necessarily mean retain tight control and restrictive policies. It's about having an appropriate security posture and an appropriate approach to risk and compliance. Training should be delivered digitally wherever possible, or at least we should save the face-to-face training experience by exception, but for everything. This might be a new skill for users to learn. I think we'll all know, sitting in front of a screen, maybe you'll experience from sitting on this webinar, that sitting in front of a screen and learning is a different experience to being in a room, but it is possible for people to learn that. But user experience is paramount in everything we've spoken about today. If you fail to offer usable tools or educate the users appropriately to be able to use those tools, they will likely vote with their feet, and you won't see the adoption rates that you're expecting or you're hoping for. So please do make sure you focus on the user. Okay, so we'll move on to key takeaways at that point. We'll come to the panel, and I'll ask each of you to give your key takeaway for our audience today. Martin, we'll come to you. Soumya, we'll come to you first.
Yeah, of course. I think I'll say it again. This is absolutely the right time to start developing a cloud migration strategy for your contact center, again, with customer experience front and center of it. It doesn't have to be a big bang change. It can be managed in phases, and it can be done in a cost-effective manner.
Thank you, Soumya. Martin?
Yeah, thank you. So I think that the push happening now around remote work is as game-changing for the future of tech as the iPhone launch was back for us in 2007. And to your point before, I don't think the future has to be a battle of office space versus fully remote work, because there's plenty of benefits to both. We can have work from anywhere with a digital workplace bridging the physical and the virtual. So maybe my biggest takeaway would be for enterprises to consider collaborative software that really enables staff to get their best ideas across, to share them across all levels of organisation, all levels of time zones, and not just to those people that have been invited to the meeting.
Thank you, Martin. And then, Chris, I don't think there'll be any surprise what your key takeaway is. But
no. Surprise. Yeah. So security, and compliance, really. So yeah, I can't stress it enough. You need to know who has access to what effectively, and ensure that correct compliance policies are in place to protect what is your most valuable asset, which is the company's data and the customer's data that you hold about your customers. So yeah, security, enable MFA for extra protection. And do some kind of application discovery to tackle shadow IT potentially. So you need to know what's going on across your IT estate to do that. And the final thing I'd say is just assess and keep reassessing, I think. So, looking after security and compliance doesn't really have a finish line. It's kind of ongoing thing. So it's, assess, check, reconfigure, and assess, check, and reconfigure again. I mean, it's kind of never ending. So yeah, security, absolutely.
Thank you, Chris. There's no surprises there. Cool, right, thank you, everyone. We're moving towards the end of our session today. For those of you on the WebEx, you can ask questions in the Q&A window. There's a button at the bottom of the screen where you can click for Q&A. We've had a couple of questions in already, so we'll make a start with those. So, does the panel have any suggestions for how to select new collaboration software? Who'd like to take that one?
It's probably one for me to give some opinion. So I think when I'm talking to customers around this point, I'll generally point towards three things to consider. So in order, probably, and most importantly, have a really clear use case. So know what you want to use the platform for, or how deep you want the integration to go. Is this going to be an area to stream comms and collaborate, or is it going to be a central hub for work and integrate other applications? Always consider the user experience and what they're looking to get from the tool. So are they going to be accessing this on web apps, on mobile app, or desktop, or is this around in-room experience? And get the end users on board early with sharing their opinions, because that will be really important with adoption, but also help deliver the third point, which is that of end user training. So creating learning paths based on use cases and based on how you want to use the service along with end user experience. So clear use case, consider the user experience, and develop an end user training strategy.
Great stuff. Thank you, Martin. We have another question waiting to be answered. The question is, I don't know what my contact center will look like in 6 to 9 months in terms of office utilization and available office space. Does the panel have any suggestions for how I optimize my current on-prem setup?
I'm happy to take that one, Dave.
Thank you.
I think I'll start off by saying that, firstly, this is perhaps a question that's faced by a lot of businesses in the current climate, and inevitably, the shift towards that hybrid working model will happen. So in terms of optimizing the current on-prem setup, I would start by assessing the readiness of your organization to support remote operations. Again, based on the learnings over the last few weeks, what have those limitations and challenges been? Are they infrastructure related or technology related, or are they more cultural barriers, people's behavior, which could potentially be addressed with training? So I touched on a few points earlier in terms of leveraging existing capabilities, but I guess if you require new capabilities put in, such as workforce management, for example, to manage remote work schedules effectively, or advanced self-service capability because of increase in call volumes, I would start by exploring what the integration capabilities are within your existing on-prem solution with third-party cloud services. If your platform supports API-based integrations, that is definitely the option to explore. And I guess if the limitations are related to the existing architecture or design, i.e., you cannot scale beyond a certain limit with the existing capability, then this is, again, a good time to start looking at a phased migration approach to a more scalable cloud-based service.
Thank you, Soumya.
I guess those are the key points, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a comprehensive answer. Thank you very much. We have a couple more questions to cover before we close. So the first one is that security has been mentioned a lot. I need to ensure my people are working securely but in an optimized way. I don't want to compromise output now that we've managed to establish a cadence. In a nutshell, what should I do?
I'll take that on, Dave. Surprisingly enough. Yeah,
thank you.
I think, so quick wins on that. So for quick win in security, it's securing a collaboration application or indeed any other application, really. I would say it's definitely introduced multi-factor authentication, MFA. It's fairly quick to set up, and it just enables secure access to those applications. I think another point to raise would be, to begin that security assessment of your security posture. So there are tools out there. A lot of organisations, they're already Office 365 customers, but there are two elements in the tenant that they could look at. So these are something called Microsoft Secure Score and a Microsoft Compliance Score. So they're in the compliance admin console and the security admin console in an Office 365 tenant. And what they do is basically they offer excellent recommendations on how to configure your Office 365 tenant more securely and more compliantly. And they do this in terms of a few key areas. So identity, data, devices, applications, infrastructure, data protection, and regulatory standards. And they even sort of have web links in there with a load of how-tos on how to set up these things as well. So, and as you go through it, obviously your score increases. So yeah. So those are a few things to look at almost immediately, really. Absolutely.
Great stuff. Thank you, Chris. And while you're off mute, we have another question here, which I think relates to something you said earlier. The question is, thanks for touching on MS Teams setup. Can you clarify if you suggest to disable ability for employees to create new teams in the application, or would you rather focus on enforcing naming conventions and user training?
That is a very good question. I think I would disable actually all users being able to create teams, and by doing that, it's a balance between user functionality but enforcing naming convention. So it's a tricky one. I suppose it depends on how disciplined your users are, to be honest. But you could have an example where you could set up some kind of process that someone has to log a call basically with a help desk, and they create the team on a customer's behalf and give ownership to the requester, and then the requester can do whatever they like with it. But the IT retains sort of ownership of managing the teams and the naming convention. So it's a tricky one. The other problem is, I think the way Microsoft do this is you have to disable creation of Office 365 groups. That can have knock-on effects elsewhere in an Office 365 tenant. So there's pros and cons to it, but yeah, how disciplined are your users, really, I suppose, is the answer to that. Yeah.
Can I add on to that, Chris, if that's all right? Sorry. I think it's a really important topic. It really touches on governance and compliance. And I think certainly when I'm talking to customers around a team's deployment strategy, I think there's a piece before the comments raised in the question that need to be considered. So I think it probably begins around sort of knowing the structure of how the teams will look, the use of the channels, the app integration that we spoke about before, the use of flow for automation, and then who can create the teams and make the changes, which is really important, and probably then how it ties into the management of SharePoint as an ongoing compliance topic. But some organisations might introduce the teams for light touch conversation, so not sort of priority or critical business conversations and work streams, but light touch things to have them introduced into an area of working and familiarity with teams. But you will find that balance of having to manage the environment, so perhaps restricting how many people can add teams and create environments versus the ability to want to engage as many people as you can early on. But I think it comes back to compliance, and you should probably link it to however you enforce your compliance and how strict that is.
Thank you, guys. And that question came from Powell. Powell, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Apologies if not. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so I don't think there are any more questions in the Q&A window, so we'll just move to the close. So thank you everybody for attending today. We've had a pretty good attendance. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is the first of a series of webinars. The others are displayed on the screen there across security, connectivity, and digital workplace. We'll have different panel for each of those with relative experts in their areas to talk you through our thoughts and guidance on what to do there. We've also released some research. I touched on it earlier, a couple of stats earlier on this. The link's on the screen there, but it's around the new era of flexible working, and there's some really, really useful insight into there, which might help you to predict what your users are going to expect beyond COVID. And then finally, some of us, in fact, have contributed to a white paper, which was released last week or the week before, which is about understanding the new BAU, the BAU, or business as unusual, where we talk about the topics we mentioned today, including security, connectivity, digital workplace, and collaboration, but also some general thoughts around what we think the future holds. And that brings us to the end today. You will see all of our contact details on the screen now. Feel free to link in with us and send us a message if you're interested in talking further. But thank you to the audience for joining today, and thank you to my panel of Souma, Martin, and Chris. And we'll say goodbye at that point. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
This concludes the conference for today. Thank you for participating. You may all disconnect.